man, a movie, a mat, a pod.
Yeah, sing to me of the pod, Muse, the pod of two people talking about books.
A complicated podcast.
Yeah,
as Emily Williams would translate it.
Yeah, tell me about a complicated podcast.
Welcome, listeners, to the Infinite Library. This is a bonus episode. Congratulations. Ben and I are taking some time out of our busy tunnel reading schedule to sit down and talk about not a book, but a movie based on a book. One of the books, you might say. If you just, opened this episode sight and scene and hit play, and you don't know what we're talking about Christopher Nolan's adaptation of the Odyssey.
That's right, listeners. In case you're like, I need even more Odyssey takes. But I think John and I are positioned to do something interesting with this one because, maybe you've seen on the timeline, people are like, oh, it's an Odyssey's about this. Nolan's Odyssey's about that. Well, actually, it's about translation and interpretation and many other things John and I will touch on. But when we were talking about doing this, we thought it would be fun to talk about Nolan's Odyssey as, a translation of one of the stories of Western literature. Yeah.
I mean, this might be controversial. My take on Nolan's Odyssey is that it's actually about nothing. It's a lot of shiny images projected on screen that somehow come out to being less than the sum of their parts.
I like the idea of Polyphemus asking what the Odyssey is about, and he hears you say nothing, and then his giant friends go, what is Nolan's Odyssey about? And he goes, nothing. And then they go, so why did you see it? I have a slightly more developed take, not that I disagree with John, but there are aspects of this that I found incredibly fascinating, especially from a revisionist Nolan perspective, which maybe you've seen, but I would say there's been kind of a turn towards taking Nolan more seriously. I started with Oppenheimer, maybe a little bit before then, but Oppenheimer was like the peak of it. And so I'm sort of fascinated in considering this movie as a artifact of Nolan revisionism, also making one of the more polytropos man of twists and turns stories into exactly one thing, which I think is not as fun as it could have been, but still interesting. So
I mean, as we kind of start off here, do we want to take like a quick second both to talk about like our individual relationships with the Odyssey and with the man himself, Christopher Nolan?
Yeah. Take us away.
Feels like that's a good place to start us off, just in terms of like where we're both coming from as we're talking about this. So, for listeners who do not know, I did not end up completing this course of study, but I actually entered college as a classics major. And so I've read the Odyssey a couple times, read a couple different translations, or at least parts of them. I think that this is probably going to come up in our discussion, but out of the two poems by the great Homer, I am definitely more of an Iliad guy than I'm an Odyssey guy, and I'll probably get to my reasons for that as we go on here, and we're discussing kind of the structure of the Odyssey as a film. In terms of Christopher Nolan, I am generally not a huge fan. I, as someone who was like 14 years old in 2008, I did think that, The Dark Knight was like the coolest movie ever when it came out. I think that there was a point where, at this point I'd probably seen, collectively like 50 movies, but, I was like, this might be one of the best movies of all time. And then The Dark Knight Rises came out. Wait, no. Then Inception came out and I was like, oh, that wasn't very good. And then The Dark Knight Rises came out and I was like, oh, this is bad.
Did you do Bane voice when it came out?
Maybe. I don't remember I mean, that was a movie I remember being very excited for and then being really let down. And then I really kind of detached from his career at that point until Oppenheimer a couple of years ago, which I actually liked a great deal, and I kind of thought was turning me around on Nolan as a filmmaker. This movie, yeah, I've swung back. I'm back to being something of a Nolan hater.
Back to being a hater. Yeah, I would say my Nolan arc is similar to yours, John, where I think I saw Inception in the theater. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't love it. And then, Dark Knight was pretty good, obviously because of the Joker, and just those like Hans Zimmer escalating string noises, which I feel like Nolan is quite good at just bludgeoning the viewer to a certain like emotional pitch. And I feel like the Zimmer stuff is like, that was one thing I remember being impacted in the theater by. But similarly, I don't think I liked Dark Knight Rises or whatever, the last one. The Bane voice, though, I was thinking about how everyone was doing Bane jokes when that movie came out, like, like that kind of stuff. And again, sometimes I feel like stuff that sticks from Nolan's movies is not the things that Nolan ostensibly wants to stick. Like the idea of the Joker performance looming larger, Bane's performance, really the villains in general. But then Oppenheimer came out, and I also didn't think I really liked it. But I actually have rewatched it after watching the Odyssey, and I think it is pretty good and better than the Odyssey, which we'll probably get into. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't watch Interstellar. I didn't watch Dunkirk. I remember somebody asking me if I was going to say Interstellar, and I said, why would I see that? Which is, again, still somewhat of a Nolan hater. But I've been fascinated how people have been kind of reconsidering him kind of as like he's one of our, big budget tentpole guys. Like, let's see what he's up to because he gets so much money,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that if we have, if auteur's theory still holds true to any degree, I mean, Nolan is an auteur.
Yeah.
Whether that means the movies are good is a separate question, but there's certainly a voice. I think that what I find really interesting with Nolan, and I think that we'll get more into this as we discuss the Odyssey, is that he is someone who I think there's this really strange tension between I think how he maybe sees himself, how like the culture at large receives him, and then like I think even a cursory reading of his films. Because I think that Nolan is someone who clearly thinks of himself as like a consummate craftsman, an incredibly smart guy. Like he's so good at like leveraging technology to do like interesting visual things. The stuff that works in like Inception is the stuff where he's, bringing M.C. Escher paintings to life.
Yeah.
Even if I think that's like a pretty boring like thing to do with the infinite tapestry of human dreams.
Right.
It's something. It's striking. I think that Nolan, is generally received by culture at large as like, again, like a craftsman, a smart guy who makes, maybe not. I think that Nolan kind of has a reputation as like a dumb guy's idea of a smart guy.
Right.
A little bit. But I still think that, particularly with Oppenheimer, especially since then, there's been a lot more kind of talk of him as someone who has big ideas. I think you look at Nolan's oeuvre, and to me, it's like, oh, this is an incredibly like, he is like the flattest romantic like to exist, like who's working today. Like every single Nolan film is actually just a recapitulation of like romantic heroic tropes of the most like one note dull varieties, just cast through this lens of like technical mystique and self-serious realism.
Right. The realistic.
I think this is particularly true with the Dark Knight trilogy, which at the time were really lauded for being, compared to, the much better Joel Schumacher Batman and Robin film. This was taking Batman seriously. This was
grounded.
Grounded.
Yeah.
Everything looks real. Just as many ridiculous, impossible things happen in those movies as happen in Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin. It's just not happening with these really lush Technicolor visuals.
Yeah,
and I think
like
that,
gags. So yeah.
And I think that, like, to me, that is really the heart of Nolan. Is he actually wants to tell incredibly straightforward, heroic narratives, largely about heroic white men doing heroic things and being rewarded for being heroes.
And
but he wants to do it in such a way that he can't be called out for it for doing something like boring. And so he grounds them in this way that I think he thinks like shields or makes them like immune from the criticism of like their fantasticality.
Well, yeah, and like the great man having these ideas. I also think related to that is his emphasis on games. Like he's very obsessed with games and acrostics and diagrams. And I think that's one way to kind of justify the existence, like you're saying, of these like, yeah, great man, romantic, one guy changing the world type stories. But then he's also got these like when did you find out that Tenet was based on that acrostic that's like an ancient acrostic of names?
Ancient. Yeah. I was ere I saw Elba.
It's basically that, but it's called what is it called? Basically, there's like a square, the Sator square. That's what it's called. Oh. And all of the character names are taken from that, and they all match up, which means you can solve for X and figure out that like Robert Pattinson is the kid. And like you're supposed to do that outside the movie, but at the same time, this is all in service of just like two guys like getting off troop transports and being like, "I see you on the other side, Buster." You know, like it's like the like action movie cliche, but it's justified by all of this like trickery. And I think like that's what's interesting about Oppenheimer and Odyssey, as we'll get into, is like there's a little less trickery with the Odyssey, but there's more with Oppenheimer. And for me, that like works more just in comparison's sake. But
well, I think that's why I liked Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer feels like the one movie that is actually, I think because he's being forced to work from like a real historical figure.
Yeah.
And a real historical figure that, interestingly enough, does kind of meet this Nolan mold of like a great man. Like, I mean, I guess somebody else could have invented the atomic bomb, but like in the case of our reality, it was Robert J. Oppenheimer. Right. And he did have to like deal with the emotional and like political consequences of inventing the atomic bomb. But like, I feel like for me, the point when I realized that I like was really down on the Odyssey was the ending, which, spoilers if you haven't seen it, Odysseus gets the exact same send-off that Bruce Wayne does at the end of The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, and
it's with Anne Hathaway again, even.
And there's like a joke of some sort involving reading, which we'll get to that. I'm puzzling over that a lot. So yeah, but yeah. And
yeah, you know, even the stuff in this movie that's ostensibly political or like big idea stuff, which is largely stuff that Nolan is either kind of adding or extrapolating from the text, kind of the larger political themes about kind of decay, immigration,
the
things like
people.
That.
Yeah.
The sea people. Oh, God, we'll get to the sea people.
They're people from the sea, John. Yes.
You know, are still always just at the surface, I think, of his desire to give a straightforward, like, heroic narrative.
Yeah, one guy doing the impossible task, or one guy shouldering the guilt of monumental change, and yeah, like the illuminated idea. So
yeah, oh man, the scene where Athena tells Odysseus, "Hey, you're being a little too hard on yourself. Why are you trying to take responsibility for all this stuff?"
Yeah, the kind of like weird modern day discourse of like take care of yourself stuff in like a Greek epic. I want to make a note here. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about this from the framework of adaptation is because, you know, this is obvious, but I think it bears repeating. Anytime you do a translation of an ancient text, you're in some ways reckoning with like how the current day sees it based on what decisions you make, your style, your presentation. And, you know, Nolan was quite open about drawing from Emily Wilson's Odyssey translation, which I've only read the intro because I wanted to see like how Emily Wilson justifies her more naturalistic interpretation. And, you know, it reflects a lot of like those concerns about we could say decolonial theory, gender theory, just things that are in the water when 2017, when Wilson's thing translation came out. Now, I don't think it's trying to like reduce the Odyssey, but that's like things Emily Wilson is thinking about. And so then Nolan reads this, and there's things Chris Nolan is thinking about in terms of, like we said, the great man, grounded interpretation, naturalistic, like not ornate style, and all of that stuff makes its way into his Odyssey, along with, yeah, as we've said, some kind of strange decisions about how to explain like the Bronze Age collapse and stuff like that. But I think that's what's worth thinking about, because, I don't remember when I first realized that I was reading an interpretation or a translation that it's not the real thing. It's like you're getting a filter of the real thing. And Bolaño says if the work is good, it shouldn't matter. But also, like, it's important to keep in mind like the context in which a translation is made, and even in an adaptation like Nolan is doing it. And I think that's what makes it, to me, interesting to talk about.
Absolutely. And I think the interesting thing with translation and adaptation, maybe translation more so than adaptation, just because adaptation typically requires the marshaling of so many more resources, I mean, don't get me wrong, like there will be people who misunderstand or misremember things about the actual Odyssey based on Nolan's film.
Right.
I don't hold that against Christopher Nolan. That's just a reality. But there's no definitive version. There will be translations after Emily Wilson. There might be further adaptations on film after Christopher Nolan. It's interesting, actually. I feel like there really aren't very many adaptations on film of the works of Homer. The only thing I'm thinking of is the film Troy from like 2004, which is bad.
And the right wingers were dredging it up as a comparison point to bludgeon Nolan's adaptation, but the Troy one just looks kind of campy, so I don't think the effect was like intended. But I haven't seen that one though. Yeah,
no, it's not very good. I mean, I think it has some similar issues to this one in terms of like it's trying to take a story that is really averse to like Hollywood style storytelling, and is trying to fit it into that mold in a way that just does not work. And then there's the stuff that personally is going to annoy me, like oh yeah, everyone's like a 20th century atheist for some reason, even though they're Greek warriors in 10,000 BC. We can get to that too, because that's, I think, another weird thing with this movie is how it handles its supernatural elements, which are obviously kind of one of the defining characteristics of the Odyssey compared to the Iliad, is the way that kind of the supernatural is woven into the text a little differently.
Yeah, and that's a useful point to talk about diverging perspectives, because I think that's where the film, to me, gets the most interesting. Also, worth noting, as you said, John, Nolan appears to have decided to adapt the Odyssey because, as he said, no one else has done it, which somebody accused him of putting duty over love, which is what characters are constantly saying they shouldn't do in the Odyssey. Like, I must adapt the Odyssey. And then he sits down to read it and he goes, wow, I've been working with these themes my entire career. And I just find that interesting, is to kind of just decide to do it randomly. And maybe that's why it's a little stilted. Who can say?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I do want to take a step back before we kind of dig into the movie more broadly, because I do want to give Chris his due to some degree. Like I think I said this to you after, I texted you after I got out of the movie, Ben, and because you'd already seen it. This is a movie I think has some really fantastic sequences.
Yeah.
There are scenes I think are great. I think the movie is at its best when it is episodic, which kind of makes sense for the Odyssey. It's an episodic text. I think that, again, when I look at it as a whole, when I try to, and again, when Christopher Nolan seems to be looking at it as a whole and trying to figure out, like, what am I saying through all these episodes? That's when I start finding myself groaning a little bit. I'll also say there's some great performances. Robert Pattinson is easily the best part of the movie. There are also really bad performances.
Somebody get those beggars out of here.
But overall, like there are really great scenes. The 3 hours flew by. Like this is something where I found myself entertained the entire time. It's when I considered it as a piece, and particularly as a adaptation of like one of the stories in the Western canon. I think you could make a case that the Iliad is like a seed story. Like all adventure stories, like in some way, have their roots in the Odyssey, particularly like if we're talking about modern adventure stories.
Yeah. And if we want to prefigure where we're going, you could even argue the bourgeoisie subjectivity is prefigured in the Odyssey. But we'll have to borrow from our friends Adorno and Horkheimer to discuss that. I also, what were you going to say? I was going to add, I agree with the episodic assessment, and I think that's what's so interesting to me about the Odyssey is the picaresque one thing after another element. It's the element of the Odyssey that Aristotle was famously not that into, where he's like giving a summary and he goes, a bunch of episodes happen. The important part is the suitors. Like he basically, that's like him summarizing the Odyssey.
It's breaking all my rules. That's my impression of Aristotle.
Yeah, the taxonomizer, my taxonomy. But I like that element of it, and I think for stretches of the movie, Nolan captures that. But the other part of it, which is so fascinating that Nolan does not capture, is the idea of Odysseus as a man who can do everything. And if you were to show every single thing Odysseus does in the Odyssey, episode for episode, no censorship, audiences would say this guy's a psychopath. like that's the epic quality of Odysseus that's interesting in the myth, the story, but as soon as you start to represent it, you have to make some changes. And Nolan decides to collapse all of them into like one thing, which is, I think, the most, damning part of his decision. Even if he gets the like, now we're in the fucking boat, like now we're going to Hades, like now we're going here, like that's like my favorite stuff. And again, Pattinson is great as the villain. Nolan, much like John Milton, seems to make his villains the most interesting thing because he needs his heroes to be like the most upright, moral, exemplar, and it makes the villains get to have all the fun in his stuff. But I think he gets the episodic stuff right. I think he collapses Odysseus into one kind of person as opposed to being polytropos, the man of twists and turns.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something there in terms of even that first scene. A man, just a man.
Yeah,
not a man of many means, not a complicated man, a man. I think that, Nolan, like, I don't really understand, like, again, getting to the end of this movie, I don't really get what type of character Odysseus actually is outside of just good. He spends so much of this movie feeling bad. Like this movie is really about Odysseus overcoming his like PTSD, I guess, because he did a bad thing one time. Well, he did the equivalent of Oppenheimer inventing the nuclear war, but for the Bronze Age collapse.
Which I literally started levitating out of my seat when that reveal happened. like I was like, oh, he's it's like every time Paul Schrader ends a movie where two characters like touch over like a pane of glass separates an embrace. It's like he's doing it again. The auteur's back. And then later when I was thinking about it, I'm like, this kind of sucks. But I think there's also a more complicated reading to what Odysseus does that I want to introduce later about the bicameral mind, because people were talking about it on Twitter. I talked about it with some people. I don't know if Nolan is actually doing this, but it makes it like slightly more interesting than just I caused a Bronze Age collapse because I violated Xenia by giving the Trojans a horse with soldiers in it. But
yeah, I think where I'm finding myself kind of again baffled by some of the choices here. It's like, again, what does Odysseus like? What are his qualities? We are told about him at the very beginning before we technically meet him. We start kind of a
trick.
A trick. We start, the Trojan War is over. We're in the hall with the suitors, with Penelope, with Telemachus.
The title card says in a time of apparent magic.
Yes. but yes, we kind of see a recitation of, or the beginning of a recitation about the Trojan War.
Yeah.
So the Iliad is kind of in theory being sung
By Travis Scott as well. So
by Travis Scott.
Yeah, which we don't have to get into. I thought that was cool, and then once he starts doing a name a face thing, I was like, I don't think this is how bards did it. And I was like, oh well, it's fine. Yeah. So
yeah. I have some thoughts on that, and just like the way that like again this feels like something we'll get into a little bit later, but there's kind of this thing where like the text will say people are doing something, but then on screen like something else is happening in terms of like the culture we're supposed to be taking here.
Yeah.
So like there's this talk about like, oh, sing the song of Odysseus, but then no one sings anything or plays any music because for Chris Nolan that's too girly.
Yeah, I want to. Instead, I want to evoke Beowulf and Germanic halls, not Greek, not the fabled high Greek pre-collapse halls, but yeah.
So there's this weird thing where this movie wants you to believe that we're looking at like this high point of civilization, but then it also is like the whole kind of looks like it sucks. Like,
yeah, it's
just this dark room.
Yeah,
with just all these like sweaty men like just eating like with slaves around like serving them. Like it doesn't. I don't ever get the sense like this is like a high point of civilization, frankly.
Yeah, John, you know what it reminded me of is Gotti when they were like, they're like, this is part of being in the mob, baby, and it's just sitting in like a dark basement, like just like with your
plotting
friends
to kill other like fat old Italian guys.
I mean, they're like, oh, that's what the suitors plot to kill, Telemachus. So it's basically like Gotti. So
but okay, so to kind of get back to the point I was trying to make here. So like, what do we learn about Odysseus in this kind of initial thing? We learn the stuff like theoretically a lot of people are going into the movie already knowing there was a Trojan War. He made the Trojan horse.
Yeah. He's not here. Yeah. He's not here right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's still traveling home. It's been, 20 years since we last saw him, but, Telemachus, of course, having been a baby when his father departed, is very curious to learn about him. So, he's asking all these people like, well, tell me about my father. And, we get different reports of Odysseus, but basically all of them just add up to, oh, he was a really good guy. Yeah. Like the kind of initial story you get is like him going boar hunting, and he like gives the boar like a sporting chance to, and like that's how he gets injured.
Yeah,
like, he has this famous like wound on his ankle, and that's how he gets it in this version.
Which so I have a quick quote. Mimesis by Auerbach, the first chapter compares the Odyssey to the Bible. And Auerbach says in a move that Nolan basically does. Let me see if I can read it, because it's literally him saying it would be easier to do this. And that's exactly what Nolan does. So Auerbach says, and so in the actual Odyssey, he doesn't give you the boar injury scene until she's washing his feet, which Nolan puts before the movie, so that when one of the head slaves is washing Odysseus' feet, she sees the scar and recognizes him. And Auerbach says as to why it's just told at the end in the story and not earlier. He said, it would have been perfectly easy to do. The story of the scar had only to be inserted 2 verses earlier at the first mention of the word scar, where the motifs Odysseus and recollection were already at hand. But any such subjectivist, perspectivist procedure, creating a foreground and background, resulting in the present lying open to the depths of the past, is entirely foreign to the Homeric style. The Homeric style knows only a foreground, only a uniformly illuminated, uniformly objective present. And so the idea that Nolan is like, well, I can't do that, so I have to show this boar scene right in the movie so you know how he got the scar, and 2, so you can prove how good he is, because he gives the boar a fighting chance, which I don't recall from the Odyssey itself. If he does that, do you know? I don't know.
I don't remember, but it doesn't seem like something Odysseus in the Odyssey would do, because Odysseus is the tricky guy.
Yeah, cunning. Yeah, deception. Yeah, so
you know, and I think that's like the thing with me in this movie is like the defining quality, like you said, of Odysseus is that he is mutable and cunning and wily. and he's not in the
Yeah.
movie. Like, you never get the impression that this is like like, I'm not saying I needed a scene where he like comes up with the plan for the Trojan horse, but like we don't see him devising any like cunning stratagems. We don't see
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
like, again, and I think that this is like, again, we'll get to the scene with Polyphemus, uh, but like even that's, you know, I think that's kind of the archetypical moment of like Odysseus's cunning. You know, he does this clever thing where he saves his men, he fights off the Cyclops, but he also does it like largely through wordplay. And Christopher Nolan like does not believe that's possible, does not think that he could put that to film in a meaningful sense. And so the Cyclops just is like an alien.
Yeah.
And
It's an alien that Odysseus like beats the shit out of and stabs in the eye and just destroys in any way possible so that his men can escape. But
yeah, and like at first I thought, again, like, oh, we're doing kind of a thing where it's like, oh, we're seeing like a real version that then like is going to be like basically we're seeing like what is going to later be extrapolated into the rest of the Odyssey.
yeah.
But like there's so few nods even to the actual stuff that happens in some of these like episodes that you're just kind of left like, well, how is this really the same story?
Yeah,
like I'm not super fond of that as a storytelling device as it is. I think that it's usually not as interesting as just having the thing happen
yeah.
and like letting it speak for itself. But like I look at this movie and I'm like, I don't see how I'm supposed to think that like this story turned into the Odyssey, you know, 5,000 years later or whatever.
Yeah, well, because it's Odysseus is not he's just sad about the Trojan War. Like and there's another reading of it too. But I like, to your point about the episodes, I think in the opening, Nolan has to have characters keep explaining Zeus's law because like that's like what Nolan thinks the story is about. And I think if you read Wilson's intro, obviously Zeus's law is a crucial part of the Odyssey in terms of like who practices right hospitality and who doesn't are kind of like the stakes of the story. But like it's also not just about that. But I think Nolan has clearly said like, well, this is actually about just Xenia, about how you have to take care of somebody, if they're visiting, you have to give them gifts and then you have to help them leave so that they don't stay too long. That's like the crucial part. And so like the suitors are violating this by staying too long to wait for Penelope to pick one of them. And so like that's almost what the story is, quote, about, not about like Odysseus being a mythic hero because he's so like amorphous at times. So
well, and it's a really I see a lot of people really like harping on the Xenia angle and like trying to do like a broader political reading of it, like like the loss of Xenia, like that's like what like anti-immigrant sentiment is in like contemporary Britain and America, and like that's just an incredibly like facile way to read like this concept of like guest right, which, don't get me wrong, like I am a firm believer that when you have a guest, like you should take care of them.
Yeah.
But like that's not what the Odyssey is like entire. Like again, what the Odyssey is largely about is how it's okay to kill people who violate. It's
right. It's okay
and
to
like
take revenge if it's justified. Yeah. So
yeah, and like these are all like the ancient Greeks. It's a slaving culture. Like this is a culture that thinks it is perfectly okay to abuse people who look different than you or speak a different language than you. And it like, I know Nolan is trying to pluck this thread of like, this original sin of the Trojan horse is like leading to the breakdown of this. But we never see a good version of it, really. We never see like what the ideal version of Xenia is supposed to look like that is being contrasted to this.
Well, I think it's only in the opening where just a random beggar comes in. And and they're so desperate for news of Trojan war vets that they help the beggar, and all the suitors are like, "Who's this, hobo? Like, get him out of here!" And like Telemachus is like, "Well, no, he might tell me about my dad," So and then they give him some food, and that's it. Like, that's the only positive scene. So yeah.
Yeah, and even, I mean, I guess there's also Menelaus when he goes to visit Menelaus, which is in the poem, is kind of a portrayal of like Xenia. But again, in terms of like this broader theme we're trying to puzzle out in terms of like, we should take care of the stranger like in our midst. Again, it's this weird thing where, again, it's like doing this Christianization or liberalization of this concept without really understanding its actual function in ancient Greek culture. Again, not necessarily a bad thing to pull out a theme and make it about more than that, but I just don't think that he actually does a good job of portraying it.
Yeah, and I mean, Emily Wilson makes a point in the intro that this is kind of like a networking thing. Like, Greeks would help each other out, and then later it became something that was like abused, and it was like, oh, these Greeks are always asking me for all these gifts. I think in the Odyssey, though, Telemachus, I think, visits Nestor and Menelaus. As a kind of like, Telemachus learns how to do hospitality law the right way, as like a kind of intro, because like that's the interesting thing about the Telemachus episodes, is that they're like Telemachus trying to become a man like his father, even though he's still stunted. And I think Nolan really plays that up in this, with the scenes with him and Anne Hathaway just wiping the floor with Tom Holland, like in acting scenes. Although I can't decide if Tom Holland being like so bad at acting is like working or not. Like, I feel like I'm kind of torn on it, because there are times when I'm like, I fucking hate this guy. And then I'm just like, well, maybe that's the point. Like, Telemachus hasn't learned like what masculinity is for the movie and in the Odyssey itself. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely been cast because he's like a perpetually baby-faced man.
Yeah.
But, I found myself thinking about how kind of the his Wario version, the great Timothée Chalamet, how he would be handling this part.
Yeah.
And I thought about, again, Timothy's portrayal of Paul Atreides in Dune, which is very much, a Telemachian character in that first section of that film.
Yeah.
And how much better he is. And I think it's just that the Spider Twink is he's a bad actor. He's a bad actor, and he's the fact that we keep trying to have this little freak like shoved down our throats is really annoying.
Yeah, and especially too, like his Spider-Man, where instead of being a working class guy trying to balance school and job, he's just like a Tony Stark scholarship kid who's just given like millions of dollars by the military complex to be Spider-Man, as opposed to like a guy who can't balance his job and his work life, which is much more relatable. But anyway, yeah.
But I think I do want to grab onto that, because I think that for me, like something that really kind of I found myself grating against even before I got to the end of this movie was all the Telemachus stuff.
Yeah.
Because it feels like Nolan intentionally choosing a less interesting thing to focus on to like cover for his own like crippling addiction to like the masculinist hero's journey.
Yeah, I mean, Telemachus
as a storytelling archetype, and his complete inability to like write women. Because again, Telemachus, like, if you're doing an adaptation of the Odyssey, Telemachus is not the character who's like most interesting to focus on. It's Penelope. I'm sorry, like, it just is Penelope. And Penelope in this movie is so boring. She has so little to do. We get one scene of her like actually at the loom, and we're just basically told that she's doing the thing that like is so famous in the story. Like, we don't actually see her doing it.
And she's like behind a screen which I would like to know the historical precedent for that, because later when Odysseus in a beggar form confesses to Penelope through the screen, I was like, holy Christianity moment. It's like I was like, was this a screen that was used, and then Nolan is like, oh, he's confessing through the screen. But like, yeah, Penelope, there's that one scene where she does the version of the Harry S. Truman moment from Oppenheimer, but to Telemachus, where like
stops here.
Yeah, like get this crybaby out of here. like basically like that, where Telemachus is, I don't remember what he's complaining about, but Penelope's like, they'd fucking kill you. They'd kill you and eat you for dinner, basically. Like, dude, don't you think I don't know that? And like it's shot in like extreme close up, and I was like, I wish we had more of that, because yeah, she's not given a lot to do. She explains the concept of the sea people to Telemachus. She says, I love this old house that looks like shit. I don't want to leave. And then, yeah, like she has to kind of like make the decision at the end to start the competition to pick a suitor. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this feels like, again, kind of a bit of an issue with the movie. And that is that 95% of the dialogue is exposition.
Yeah, which Nolan is kind of bad at, and you really notice it in the opening. Yeah. And like I feel like he still can't quite get over it, because it happens in Oppenheimer. Also, a big favorite in Tenet. If we don't succeed, this will destroy the entire world, including my son. Like, yeah, just like there's like a way the stakes are always like underlined every time, you know. So, but
well, of course, Ben, you know, like the world is nothing compared to like my personal patriarchal property relationship to my children.
I mean, that's also what this movie is about. So yeah, like,
well, that is also kind of what the Odyssey is about. So that's not really Nolan's fault.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
But you know, there's this big, you know, she has this big blow up where she says like, I've been running Ithaca for 20 years. We don't see it. Yeah. We don't see her actually running any, like, it wants to like have its cake and eat it too. It wants to kind of, I think, rightly kind of follow this thread that has been picked up in the intervening centuries since the Odyssey was written, of Penelope as kind of this quasi-feminist character, you know, or at least like a character who has like a lot more interesting interiority and like a much more interesting and active role in the story than like your average female character in this type of story usually does. You know, she is making choices. She is choosing to do things. You know, she's fighting off these suitors like in an appropriately feminine way, but she's doing it.
Right.
But then it doesn't really want to show us that. It really doesn't want to deal with that, because we have to be following around Tom Holland while he just gorps at everything in front of him.
Well, there is a nice scene with Pattinson and Anne Hathaway, because Pattinson is actually a good scene partner. And as Antinous, he is essentially trying to get Penelope to live, laugh, love a little bit, if you will, because he's like, hey, you've been taking care of Ithaca so long, like you need to take care of yourself, like you should love me. And I think Anne Hathaway like plays that fairly well by like cracking a little bit, but also like I don't remember what happens, but she's like, actually you're kind of gross and I don't care about you. But like,
well, I think he reveals that he knows about the weaving, and then she realizes that one of the what's her face,
the Mia Goth character,
Mia Goth, you know, has betrayed her.
But like,
and
there's
she gets all pissed off about it.
But there's like a nice bit there where like Pattinson is doing his best to like switch the slimy gear into like charming Pattinson, and like Anne Hathaway actually has a good scene partner. If we had more of that, I think we could have addressed what you were saying, because a lot of it is just her like yelling at Telemachus, and then Telemachus trying to like yell at her and be a man, and he can't do it because he's not a man yet. So.
Yeah, and like I just don't think that's an interesting. Like, we already have one hero's journey in the story. I don't need another one.
Well, that's a good question, John, because one of the intros I read, I think the Fagles one, says that like if you want to look at the weird structure of the Odyssey as a text, the Telemachus, almost the Telemachimiad or whatever it's called, the intro Telemachiad is like almost like a writer saying, I need a on ramp into the Odyssey. Like the Odyssey would have probably started with just like him doing stuff or just on Calypso's island, and not like, oh, what's going on at home, so that the return is better. And so there's some argument that was added as a way to make it a more satisfying like written story as opposed to like a orally performed story. Which I find, I'm somewhat sympathetic to that, but yeah.
I am too. I think that, again, the problem with I mean, I don't just think the Odyssey, but like the homecoming narrative as a whole is like, why the fuck do I care about Ithaca?
Right. Yeah.
It's like if he just shows up and it's like it's the first time we hear about any of these people, like why would I care? Like you have to kind of ground me in like this person. You have to show me like what this person cares about before I can care about whether or not he's going to get back to it.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting instance of like somebody writing a story down and needing to have those things set in first, as opposed to just somebody say, "Hey, like, tell me about when Odysseus, poked Polyphemus' eye," and then the guy would just start singing it and not do like the whole story or something.
Yeah,
But,
just do an episode, because presumably you weren't sitting down and like hearing someone recite the whole Iliad in one sitting.
Well, supposedly people did that, but it was like 3-day events.
Yeah,
They'd
it was like going
shifts.
to the opera. Yeah, it was like going to Bayreuth for like the ring cycle.
Yeah. Which like,
but like your average night, you were not like doing that. You're asking your bard to sing like one particular section to you.
Yeah, you're asking your slave to do bits for your enjoyment. Like,
man, I would have been so good at that. That's really like, I would have been so good at being like the art slave.
Well, that's what's so great. I mean, we've talked about how much we love the Longships before, but like, I love those two Irish clowns in that story where they're like, "Yeah, we're running because we made our former employer laugh so hard that he died, and then we have to flee." like it's like, yeah, that's what would happen if you were an art slave. Like, but yeah. So I think I want to touch on. We should probably talk about Polyphemus now. I think because we could talk about one of the episodes.
Well, I want to talk about one other thing first, because I want to talk again about kind of this beginning section before we're like totally on the Odyssey. Because again, we start. Well, technically, we start with we start with Sinon on the beach.
Right.
Then we cut to the hall. Then we cut to the end of the Trojan War proper.
Yeah,
and we have the loading of the ships, and they decide to take go south instead of west.
Also, wait, before we go through that, John, what did you think of 10 years on this fucking beach? Did that work for you?
Honestly, that part did work for me. Like, I think that is actually an interesting, again, in terms of like that kind of Wilsonian leveling, kind of bringing you down to the level, bring the text like down to a vernacular. Rather than like intentionally archaicizing.
Right.
I think that, 10 years on this fucking beach, like there is an element to that where it's like, I'm more of an Iliad guy, but I think a big part of the Iliad is like, they've been on this fucking beach for 10 years. Can you imagine how fucking boring that must have gotten?
Right. I also like in that scene that you get like, because apparently the IMAX cameras can only shoot for 3 minutes, so I feel like you get these like snatches of like Matt Damon relatable mode, and that's like exactly one. Just 10 years on this fucking beach, let's leave or something. Like, I can't remember, maybe he doesn't even say that, but yeah, like I think you're right in terms of underselling or like bringing it down a level to what actually happened as opposed to heightening it. So
but I don't think it's like insulting my intelligence either. Like, it feels like this thing of like, oh yeah, it has been 10 years on this fucking beach. Like, no wonder they did the nuclear option.
Right.
Because they've been stuck here for 10 years. Like, again, I think with the Odyssey in general, that's the thing that always like stands out to me is like, it's been 20 years he's been gone. Like, can you even imagine? Because like, you've been home for 20 years. Is that home anymore? Yeah,
like 10 years of the war, 7 years with Calypso, and then the suitors started 3 years, I think, from the timeline. So maybe there's 3 years of wandering, I think. So it's like,
but like approximately 20 years, we'll just say.
Well, but like I think they say like he was with Calypso for 7 years. I think
he was with Calypso for 7 years, and that's in the text as well. But like, the Trojan War it's a stalemate. And again, I want to talk about this the Nolan film and its relationship to the Iliad and to the Trojan War as we're going here. But like, it wants to ground you in the fact that like, it was 10 years. This is not like we're not like we're not downplaying the Iliad as a thing. Like, you know, it's not like, oh, this was just like a skirmish that then got blown up by the bards later. Like, they were here for he's been here for 10 years, and he's seen like thousands of people die, you know, like they're finally going home. Like, let's go. You know, he's grounding you in like, why is it important for them to want to go home? And, you know, I think too, why do they choose to not go the easy way? And I think that, again, kind of grounded, that's where Agamemnon comes in.
Right.
The great Benny Safdie is an Agamemnon.
Yeah, Agamemnon as Bane. Yeah, so...
I want to talk about the art direction with that armor at some point, because I think there's something interesting there. But yeah, we start off, we're on the boats. Again, I think that there's kind of this intentional attempt to ground us, and I think that this is, again, a tension I see in the film where I think the Nolan Odyssey really wants us to believe that Odysseus cares about his men.
Yes, yeah.
He wants them to get home as much as he wants to get home, or at least that's what he says.
Yeah.
But we only, like, it's interesting. Like, I feel like this is a problem in, you know, films like this that have kind of a big but kind of shallow cast. I feel like I learned to recognize characters by their face.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know what any of their names were supposed to be. I don't know what qualities they were supposed to have, aside from just kind of like physical characteristics. Like, one of them's Asian, one of them's Indian, one of them's like the big beefy guy. So, you know, and again, maybe there's something here Nolan's trying to do about, like, does Odysseus really care about his men, or is, you know, this some kind of resistance or like coping mechanism for him because he doesn't really want to go home?
Well, I mean,
there's something there.
There's a nice bit where he says, like, we'll take the slow way back. We'll, you know, maybe we'll see the world. And I feel like that's a nice moment of, like, Odysseus, the bourgeoisie subjectivity that, like, Adorno and Horkheimer talk about. There's also a great Anne Carson's piece on Contempts, the movie, Godard's Contempt, where she says, Homer's Odysseus is a man who wants to eat the world. He has an appetite for tasting, knowing, possessing everything he sees. He is a hero of acquisition. He is one who knows profit, as Homer says. And I think you don't see that a lot in Nolan's one, but that comes out when he goes, yeah, let's not follow Agamemnon back. Let's see the world. Maybe we'll, in parentheses, like, rape and plunder and pillage, although we don't see that either. So, yeah.
Well, again, I think there's an interesting tension here again. And I think that this comes down to, like, Nolan's, like, fundamental discomfort with, like, the story he's actually trying to adapt. And that is the fact that, like, okay, again, this comes down to, again, like, the exposition not matching what we are seeing.
Right.
So again, in, like, this first scene in Ithaca, you know, we're like, Penelope basically says, like, I don't want to hear the Iliad. I don't want to hear this fucking bullshit story about how you know, the brave Greeks went to fight the Trojans for Helen. It had nothing to actually do with Helen. It was really about Agamemnon wants control of the trading routes.
Right. Which, yeah, so.
And then, you know, again, when the men are, like, on their way home, Odysseus's men don't seem to have any stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like, you know, there is no treasure. Like, there's one ring that is really just there to be like a Chekhov's gun during the Circe scene.
Yeah, that's true.
But, like, they don't have any treasure. They don't have any slaves. They don't have any women. They are apparently just going home, like, empty-handed.
Wow.
And,
yeah,
you know,
I didn't think about that, but, like, yeah, they really are. So,
and even, like, again, we'll get to the sacking of Troy. All anyone's doing is killing people.
Yeah.
No one's taking anything. I'm not saying I wanted, like, graphic on-screen rapes, but, like, there's no, like, implication even.
Nobody's holding, like, some jewels or something, or like, yeah.
You know, no one's, like, I was comparing that scene to the raid scene in The Northmen from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Which is a scene that makes the, like, historical practice of, like, armed men showing up and raiding your town out of nowhere, like, treats that with like the gravity and horror that it deserves.
Yeah, like that slow panning on that locked barn with people inside of it that they just lit on fire. Yeah, so yeah.
Whereas in this, like Troy is this like Troy does not feel like a place people live. Troy is just this assemblage of like cyclopean marble that like somehow like they can also set some things on fire.
Right, yeah.
Like there's no culture here. There's no specificity. And again, maybe like Nolan is clearly trying to do something where it's like, oh, it's like this is archetypical in some way. Like this is again this archetypical destruction of Bronze Age civilization,
right? Yeah,
by barbarity. But it's like you actually like what's barbaric? Like you have to show me what's barbaric. In the same way, he doesn't want to show us what civilization he thinks like is being destroyed here.
Yeah, yeah,
because he's not interested in that.
Yeah, it's almost like a kind of like primal scene, the sack of Troy, as opposed to like, you know, a thing that somebody would be interested in doing to get money. Like
but
to
even
get,
there, yeah, there's this disavowal of the actual purpose of any of this.
Yeah.
Like you're not just sacking Troy because you're sacking Troy because you've been there for 10 years. They have all this cool stuff. They have Helen.
Like, which, you know, to the movie's credit, doesn't quite spell out as a Xena violation, even though it's often interpreted that way as like the violation that the gods are upset about. Because like, correct me if I'm wrong, John, aren't the gods just like, yeah, Troy's got to go? Like they're like the gods have decided in the Iliad that like Troy must fall in some way, not like, oh, who knows what'll happen, you know? But
yeah, in the Iliad itself.
Yeah, or like at least that's what was my impression.
I mean,
yeah.
again, I think that again, if we want to talk about the Iliad, we could talk about the Iliad. You know, the Iliad is again part of the reason I like the Iliad more is that the Iliad does not have a telos in the same way that the Odyssey does.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the Iliad ends ambiguously.
Right, because doesn't Hector like get killed and then that's it? I think, or
yeah, well, he gets killed and then like King Priam comes to collect the body.
Oh yeah.
But like we don't actually see Achilles bite the dust, even though we know he dies later. You know, the Trojan War does not come to a conclusive end there. You know, it is just like this self-contained like scene, or assemblage. Whereas like the Odyssey, like Homer invents plot. You know, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end in this way that like we come and there's happily ever after.
Yeah.
In this way that like I personally find less interesting. But yeah, in the Iliad, like the question's still kind of out. You know, Zeus is still making up his mind. You know, the different gods have their personal like feelings on the matter, and some of them favor the Greeks, some of them favor the Trojans. You know, there is a sense that like it's not entirely in mortal hands what's going to happen. But it's not quite in the Odyssey where it's like Odysseus is fated to go home, and thus even the gods cannot stop him.
Well, yeah, and like that's what's interesting about the Calypso bit, because in the story itself, the gods have to tell Calypso to let Odysseus go. And in the Nolan movie, she's like, as somebody said online, she's like a new age therapist, basically. Like, here, take some ketamine and process your trauma. Like, you know, so.
And she, like, there's not really even an implication that she's like a divine or like supernatural figure, even.
Yeah, she's like a beach lady.
Some lady who lives on the beach.
Yeah, that first scene when she walks forward and she's wearing a fishnet, I thought, ha ha ha. And then I'm like, oh, wait, this is a Nolan movie. There's actually going to be no sex or eroticism whatsoever. So
again, you know, that's another thing that kind of annoyed me with this film. You know, again, I think that I'm not saying I'm not saying I want you to just 1-to-1 adapt the Iliad,
right?
Or not the Odyssey as it is in the text. Like, yes, Odysseus does things that like I don't think are worth putting to film. Like, I'm glad we don't get the actual end scene of the Iliad where they hang all of the disloyal slaves.
Well, also, what's so galling about that scene is Odysseus is like, hey, son, you got to kill those slaves. And then Telemachus goes, I would not, what is it, like, I would not soil my blade with their blood. Like, he's like, they should be hung. And Odysseus is like, good idea, son. Like, and then like, it's literally like chilling. And again, like, again, in the story, I think it works because Odysseus is every type of quality. He is not like, and to me, that's not to say he has no qualities, but like, he's able this range of perspectives, and you have to make decisions when you're adapting. You can't do all of them, but like, that one really does chill the blood to me in terms of the end. Like, just all these people killed for no reason. Yeah. So, but
like, you know, I guess what I'm also saying is just like, there's stuff that I don't think is worth it, you know, and again, in terms of like the very real fact, we're adapting this for like a mainstream, like 2026 audience. Yes. Right. I'm not saying we need to have Odysseus, just as he is in the text, because like we're writing this story for a audience of people who don't think slavery is necessarily cool and don't think that you should just mass murder slaves.
Well, what's crazy is Nolan still has to make Mia Goth seem like she deserves it. Mia Goth as a horror actress, and then 2 is the one who betrays Penelope, and she just gets locked in the room with the suitors, but we don't see her death.
Well, it's burning.
Right. So presumably she dies, but like we don't see Telemachus like hang her or something. But like, I think it's even interesting that even then Nolan has to make her inherently evil in order to justify to the audience what's going on. So yeah.
Well, and I think also where I am getting to is like, I think that like the removal of like anything erotic from the story, like, again, I'm not saying the movie has to take the totally cavalier attitude towards Odysseus' infidelities that the text does, where it's like, this is another way that you know he's really cool is because he gets to sleep with all these hot goddesses.
Well, he's a hungry man. He wants to eat the world, as Ann Carson says. So yeah,
but like, I think that just the even like kind of Nolan seemingly like foreclosing the idea that like Odysseus could be unfaithful.
Yeah.
Like, it takes away an element that could actually have felt realistically human. Again, it's like he's supposed to have like PTSD.
Right.
But he never does anything bad because of that.
Yeah, he doesn't like lash out at Telemachus or something, or like he doesn't like lash out at his men either.
Yeah, like even when like he's like eating the lotus at the beginning, like that's something that's been foisted on him. Like, it's not like he's trying to dull the pain. Someone else has chosen to do that for him.
You say that, but stop eating the lotus. But I love it so much. Like, another, just again, like every so often, Nolan just writes a like clunker that just sticks in my brain, like including my son. But I love it so much. Like,
also, I have walked through fires of anarchy and pain.
Okay.
We gotta, Ben. We gotta start teaching rhetoric again.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so fucking sick of people just throwing words out there and not thinking of what they're saying.
Yeah. Ezra Pound, do not say dim lands of peace.
I cast Troy. I burn Troy screaming to the ground. Those don't agree with each other.
Yeah. Well, what is it to burn? I burn Troy, burn the world entire. I think that's like at least better, but still not great. So yeah.
Okay. So Polyphemus.
Yeah, this one was. I like how when they poke him in the eye, they were like, turn those volume levels all the way up, like for the scream. Like, it literally, like, they're like, if it wasn't loud already, and it usually, like, I saw it in 70mm, but not IMAX, they like cranked it when he screams when they poke him in the eye. But yeah,
Polyphemus, and again, I think all the kind of the classic Iliad episodes, the picaresque portions of the movie. It's interesting because Nolan shows a really strong horror sensibility in a lot of these scenes in a way that actually, I think there's a little bit of that in Oppenheimer.
Yeah, especially the scene where he gives the speech after the bomb was dropped, and he has all those like paranoid flashback stuff. Like when he did you know that like when he sees that woman with the peeling skin in Oppenheimer, that's Nolan's daughter?
I did not. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So he's like, I'm casting my daughter as like the one victim Oppenheimer can see in that horror scene. So yeah.
Yeah. Again, we'll probably get to this eventually, but as you asked at one point, Ben, what does Christopher Nolan feel so guilty about?
Yeah, I want to know, because I think saying it's superhero movies is not it. Like there's more going on there. I mean, it's part of it, but it's the least interesting read of the question. Is he's guilty about superhero movies? I'm like, the time is pat. Like maybe at one point he was. I don't think that's his, like a forefront concern.
Yeah,
but,
that is, well, like I think the MCU happens even without the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
But okay, Nolan shows a really strong like horror sensibility in these scenes. I think the Polyphemus scene in particular and the Circe scene are probably the two best. I think that Scylla and Charybdis kind of get lost in like Nolan's like refusal to make Scylla interesting.
Well, so I'm a little more sympathetic. Yeah. And then you're just like, really, I was kind of struck by how fast and sudden it was. And I know that's, I think, part of it, because Odysseus has already just resigned himself to the fact that these men are going to get killed. And so he just kind of does like just keep rowing, like while it's happening. And so like the hurriedness of the treatment is at least thematically consistent, but it's also just kind of disappointing. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like making Scylla like just a generic like Cloverfield monster, basically.
And like each 6 head just like grabs a guy and just pulls him out. It's
just like a tentacle, basically. Like it's not, like, I don't know. Again, this is where I kind of find myself getting frustrated. It's like, and again, I think this is why Nolan is maybe a bad person to adapt this particular story. I'm really tired of filmmakers in particular, because I feel like this has primarily been an issue with like translating stuff into visual mediums, like refusing to show us the thing we're there to see because they're like, oh, that's silly. It's like, Scylla in the story is like a monster that has like 7 legs that are also snakes that end in the heads of dogs. Why can't I see that? Like, why won't you just show me that? Why do you think that like that's like too silly?
Well, speaking of that, there's an analog to Villanueva's Dune, where the one Dune book where the guy just straight up turns into a worm, and he said like I can't adapt that. He's like, I can't have a way to make it look grounded, because Villanueva also likes the grounded stuff. I think that's the problem is realism.
But we don't have to have realism. It's so frustrating. It's like, we have the tools. Like we have, CGI is good now. Like you can, like, again, because like Scylla's just CGI. Like it's not a big puppet. I mean, that would be cool if it was, but I get why you can't do that. But like, give me the thing. Again, even like the Cyclops, like, okay, Cyclops is maybe a little less dramatic because at the end of the day, Cyclops, yes, it's a big giant with one eye.
And it's a puppet, too, that they used. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, and you can tell in those scenes, there's a real sense of physicality there that feels different.
Yeah.
And I think also with the Laestrygonians, which I do want to talk about a little bit, too.
Oh, right.
I think that's an interesting inclusion in this text. But like, it's just a big pale, like he has to be pale. He has to like, again, look like a gray basically, because like he can't look like a fantasy creature entirely. He has to look real, which for Nolan just means like muted color palette.
Well, and he has that twisted nose and his eyes is
so
different.
It's like he's a mutant instead of like, and again, there's something where like after they put his eye out, he's like moaning. Yeah. And it kind of sounds like he's saying Poseidon, but Nolan, I think, is kind of implying that the men are like believe he's saying that. And like there's no actual like like they're misrecognizing his words, if they're words at all, because
and there's
like,
no hubris where Odysseus is like, yeah, and tell him who poked your eye out. It was me. Like, you know, like,
yeah. And so again, like the Polyphemus scene for me feels like, again, it's great when the stuff is actually happening, when it's like, oh, they're trapped in the cave and he's eating them. Like, that's great. It's scary. Like, it's intense. But again, it's like, then I look at the scene after it's over and I'm like, that's so much less interesting than the story. Like, why am I being told a boring version of this story?
Well, and there's like moments where it like, I remember being kind of in with the kind of like dour mood. And then when Matt Damon starts doing some bants, a couple of riffs about the cheese, I was like, what are we doing here? Like, I was like, is this going to be a fun scene? Cause it's set up like a horror scene, like you said. And like, when you see the giant cheese on the wall, it's like, oh, there's a big guy who lives here. He's going to come back. But Demon's like, oh, it's pretty good stuff. You know, it's like, and I'm just like, what are we doing here? And then then it becomes like horror. I was like disappointed in how like they just like leave and then he just like shoots him with an arrow. It has a very like, to me, anticlimactic ending to the episode that just ends with, oh, you probably pissed Poseidon off, and then they get,
which again is really just because we have to like justify like some of the like boat stuff getting broken up by the Cyclops,
right?
And like some people getting killed. Because again, it's like we don't actually get the scene where he says, I, Odysseus, son of Laertes, was the one who bested you, Polyphemus.
Right.
So he just has to impulsively do this because we have to like have the Cyclops like chase them. And
we don't get it. Basically what I want is a scene where Polyphemus is like, Odysseus is dabbing on me. They're dabbing on us. But, well, I also, to me, the Polyphemus thing is interesting because in Wilson's intro, she does a like colonial reading of it. Like Polyphemus is reduced to a indigenous native who doesn't know civilization and agriculture, which Odysseus uses as justification for fucking him up. And that's an element of this episode I hadn't considered before, and I think it's very interesting. And I think Nolan could have maybe gone a little bit more in that direction, but since like, again, I guess maybe the IMAX cameras, we can't have somebody like give a speech. So it's just like we're stuck here, fuck this guy, so. But
well, and again, and it's weird too, because again, in the book, like Polyphemus is not like alone, like he's part of a tribe of Cyclopes that live on this island. And again, in terms of like what Nolan is theoretically trying to do with, again, this idea of like breaking hospitality, breaking like the fragile bonds between people, like we don't get that because Polyphemus is just this prodigy. He's just this thing that's out of nowhere. There's no context really aside from what's assigned to him. And, it's portrayed as shitty that like Odysseus shoots him, but at the end of the day, like he trapped them in the cave and started eating them.
Right. Yeah.
So like they again, it's not even like this thing where it's like there's a miscommunication that is on Odysseus's end. Because again, at the end of the day, like there's like an implication that maybe they're going to like try to be violent, but they don't just try to like steal all the shit and leave.
Right.
Like they're like, oh, stoke the fire. We'll greet the owner when he gets here.
Yeah.
There is kind of this sense that like maybe they're going to try to parlay.
Well, and it's interesting you say that because I think before this, isn't that the scene where they sail up on like
the totally normal town?
Yeah, the totally normal town, and they're like, we're civilized, and the guy's like, no, you're sea people. like, and he goes, we're not sea people, and he goes, I think you're sea people. Like, and obviously, this is like more, dramatic, and he says he's speaking in a language, I guess,
through a translator.
Yeah, through a translator. So like, it's more dramatic, but like that thing is already underscored. Yeah, and then they're like, oh, we should try to be hospitable, and turns out we've entered the punished zone at this point. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, and then we get to the scene with the Laestrygonians, which is kind of our next episode, who I think it's interesting Nolan chooses to do this scene because it's, I think out of all the like classic Odyssey episodes, it's the one that people kind of don't know.
Yeah.
I got out of the movie and I looked up who were the silver guys because I was like, I don't really know who those were supposed to be.
What I liked about this scene too is there was no dialogue. It was really just like horrific, essentially. Like,
again, it's shot like a horror movie. Like they show up on this island. There's this weird, like fey child who they like attempt to communicate with, who just starts screaming, runs off, and then like a bunch of like robot orcs come out and just start massacring everyone while the trees conspire against them.
The trees thing I wanted more with, because I saw that I'm like, whoa, this is cool. And then they don't go back to it. Like there's like one scene of them being trapped. I also like in Ulysses the way James Joyce does the Laestrygonians is that Bloom goes to a pub and gets really weirded out seeing everybody eat meat. Like there's like all these details of them just like picking their teeth and stuff. And so he gets freaked out and he's like, I'll just have a cheese sandwich, please. And that's the way it's done in Ulysses.
And then Matt Damon takes a bite of the cheese sandwich and says, oh, this is good stuff.
Then he does a little bant.
I think that, like you were saying with the trees, I feel like, again, the episodes here, again, I like them all kind of on their own. And again, I think Cersei as well. We can talk about Cersei a little bit, because I think that is, again, where Nolan is trying to do like a more straightforwardly, like, I guess, political reading.
Feminist.
Because it's kind of set up that like Cersei turns them into pigs because like, a bunch of armed men show up at her house demanding food. And she's like, oh, they're going to kill and rape me and take all my stuff. Yeah. Which is a reasonable thing to think if you were a person who lives alone on an island and a bunch of armed Greeks show up at your door.
I'm also a big fan of when they're like, she's like, just take your armor off outside. And then they see like armor from previous people and they just go, there's nothing wrong with that.
Probably fine.
Probably fine. Also, the scene where Nolan just shows, so Odysseus isn't with them when this happens because he's hunting for food and he shoots a deer and there's like a horror reveal where the deer is a guy, but you just see some guy's bare ass. And for some reason I thought that was like really funny at the time. I'm just like, oh, so now he shows nudity. Some guy.
No eroticism in Nolan's Odyssey. What are you talking about? There was 5 seconds of man ass.
Just like lying in a field and he's like, oh, and then and then it shows him like,
so he immediately like figures all of it out.
Immediately. I do think the body horror in that scene is great though, with the like physical, like her like distorting them to look like pigs. She doesn't just snap her fingers and poof, they turn into pigs. So
I mean, it looks great. It's a really cool scene. I think, Ben, you described it as like a great out of nowhere body horror sequence.
And what's great is like I was not expecting it, but there's a way they start doing this vocal delivery where they're eating, and one of them is going like, and like doing like a weird laugh, and I was like, oh no, something's about to happen, and like then it starts. But like I like that it's cued in by like the vocal delivery before the scene starts. But
and there's even like there's some great stuff where you can tell they're like playing footage in reverse to like show like food getting forced into people's mouths.
Like going up.
And, like that's great. Again, when this movie is choosing to do practical effects, like it looks fantastic, and I like that, and I like that Nolan didn't just do like CGI for every single thing, but like there's this weird tension throughout the film, where again, like Cersei is a literal witch.
Yes,
she could do real magic. She gets prophecies that she says come from the gods and are always true. They go to the land of the dead and actually meet, real ghosts who tell them stuff.
That's probably my favorite sequence, because I feel like all the vibes were working really well. The music, the lighting, the delivery, the way they shot it. Like I kind of wish like every scene was like the Hades scene, but yeah.
Well, I think that, again, that's kind of where I'm coming to, because I think that the Cersei and the Land of the Dead scene work really well, because like they're the ones that actually show you the thing that you're there to see.
Yeah.
Which is Ben getting turned into pigs and a bunch of like cool ghosts.
Like covered in grime and blood and delivering like, portentous dialogues. So,
I feel like there's this tension in the movie because Nolan can't decide what is real and what isn't.
Yeah.
Like, are the gods real? Like, Odysseus himself seems to imply that he both does and does not believe in the gods.
So
like, he spends the movie talking to Athena, but then like at some point he's like tells the men like sacrifice to your gods if you want to.
I defy the gods. Yeah.
Which again tells me that Nolan maybe read the excursus on the Odyssey in Dialectic of Enlightenment, because there is like that text is a lot about like sacrifice is stupid and doesn't work, and like the Odyssey is kind of about that.
Well, and about like sacrificing yourself to preserve yourself, like renunciation. Yeah.
But like didn't choose to do anything interesting with it.
See, I would. Here's a moment to talk about the origin of consciousness and the breakdown of the bicameral mind. Are you familiar with this kind of crackpot 70s theory?
Yes.
So for people who aren't
give a brief spiel for the listeners. For
people who aren't familiar, during the 70s, when people were really into schizophrenia as like a theory of mind, somebody took basically a lot of Bronze Age artifacts and tried to prove that the basically Bronze Age collapse led people from thinking that their interior thoughts were gods to then the gods leaving and them having to deal with like interiority and consciousness, as it were. And so that there's like this splitting that happens, and you can look at certain written artifacts where like people are asking like, where are the gods? The gods don't visit me anymore. I don't hear them. And there are a lot of differing explanations from it. This one, the crackpot one, is like not really scientifically validated, but people like thinking about it because it's like a convenient way to talk about like how bad the Bronze Age collapse was and what it did to the human mind. And some people were saying on Twitter, and I did a little research, that Nolan appears to have wanted to do something like that with Odysseus, that like by participating in the Trojan War, Odysseus basically can no longer identify the gods in his head, and he has to deal with his own interiority, which Nolan just feels with trauma and regret and shame and stuff, and not like, you know, Odysseus being the one person who can like narrativize and like, you know, introspect, which is why he says I defy the gods. And that's something that like I think if it wasn't there, it would have been pulled off better. For me, I feel like it's something that's like floating above what's Nolan's doing, but I don't think he like implemented it well. So
well, again, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like there's this way in which like it feels like the text can't decide, are we doing a supernatural, like are we doing the Odyssey? Are we doing, you know, there's gods, there's monsters, or are we doing kind of like the gritty, like, oh, this is what really happened, and like, you know, I don't know, like the Cyclops. Oh, it's just like a 6'8" cannibal who had one eye, you know,
right.
And like, but not because he's like a mutant, but just because like one of his eyes was shot out. You know, like that type of storytelling. And so there's this weird tension where it's like, okay, there's a person who can do magic.
Right.
Like that's not like what Cersei does. That's not apparent magic. That's magic.
Yeah.
You know, again, I'm not a fan of like the art direction here, but like Scylla is like a weird, like otherworldly Cloverfield monster who lives in a cliff and eats people. The Lastrygonians are, I don't even know what they're really supposed to be. Like they kind of seem like aliens. They kind of seem like robots.
Well, and we don't see them as cannibals, which would be the one thing to show for them. Yeah, they just seem like they just kill for no reason. Which, again, I think that actually is like Nolan kind of doing something interesting there, where it's like, oh, these people are like, they're monsters not because they're even like killing to eat, but just because like they just kill. Yeah, exactly. There's no hospitality whatsoever. Yeah.
Like again, like Calypso, no real implication that she's divine at all. She's just like a weird like new age lady who lives on a beach
and eats lotus flower, which is
the lotus isn't magic, it's just like a narcotic, you know. Even like again towards the end, like Odysseus realizes that, you know, as he's remembering, he realizes that Athena has been appearing to him wearing Zendaya's face, because Zendaya was like a girl he saw get killed at Troy.
Yeah.
Which again, I don't even think is a terrible idea necessarily, because like, you know, Athena says like, oh, the gods appear in ways that are actually very obvious if you mortals are paying attention. But Odysseus is like repressing this memory so deeply that like he can't understand what she's doing.
Or like he's having the breakdown of the bicameral mind, like as a result of what happened. And like he can't, like the gods then are something that you have to perform perfunctory because you no longer hear them, according to the theory. And again, like, I don't know if that's like expelled because I just the whole time I'm like, oh, she's a personification of the guilt. But the fact that like she keeps like flickering in and out when he's trying to talk to her, I think is supposed to be like he's losing this and he's becoming like, you know, his contact with the gods is going away. But
yeah, but I think there's also just this weird tension where, again, like Nolan can't decide what is and isn't real because he can't decide like where he wants this movie to fit. And again, it doesn't feel ambiguous, it just feels like he's not making a choice. Or again, he's choosing to leave it so up in the air that like the actual content is so muddy. Like again, the whole idea of the law of Zeus, what does that mean if Zeus is not real? If Zeus is just a social fiction?
Well, I mean,
that's an interesting question to ask, but the film doesn't ask it. It just tells us that this law is self-evidently correct because it's divine in some way.
Well, but the way Nolan chooses to show those gods is through like audio cues. Like when he finally takes revenge on the suitors, there's like a giant lightning bolt and like a thunder crack, and that's supposed to be like, oh, Zeus is here. But then the flip side is Athena is talking to Odysseus, but in the persona of the priest or woman he saw get killed, and that's like a different way of making apparent the gods. And like again, like I don't think Nolan, like Villeneuve being afraid of showing a giant worm man, I think Nolan was afraid of showing like the personification of Poseidon or like the personification of Zeus, because like you were saying, he there's no way to do it realistically. So, which
is weird because again, theoretically there also shouldn't be realistic to show all the ghosts in the underworld, but he manages to do that. And so to me, it feels like a failure of creativity.
Yeah.
That I think at some level is driven by this weird contempt for like Greek mythology as like a belief system. You know?
Yeah. Well, and it makes me wonder too, like if he had read a different Odyssey translation, maybe if he had cross-referenced Wilson's with something else, like, I don't know. The Wilson approach to making it accessible and modern day vernacular is like we said, one we're sympathetic to, but at the same time, like the gods are in Emily Wilson's version. Like Athena shows up and routinely talks to Odysseus. Like, so, but
yeah. Or like, again, there's no bag of wins. I feel like that's like the big thing that people are like, where's the bag of wins? And again, it's like for Nolan, that's too fanciful.
That is one of my favorite. Yeah, but I also, that's like a great example of Odysseus's crew just being idiot children, where it's like, here's this big bag of wins, don't open it all at once, and they just immediately open it all at once, and they get blown like 100 miles off course or whatever. Like it's so funny, and Nolan's like, I can't do that. So,
and again, and it's weird because like again, I think the scene with the sirens works really well.
Yeah, so we should talk about that because that's a nice clear parallel with Adorno and Horkheimer, because they make great hay out of that episode in Dialectic of Enlightenment. So
yeah, I feel like we should just take a second to just kind of define our terms here. So Adorno and Horkheimer's Dialectic of Enlightenment, a book I've talked about on the show before. Their first section of that book is an excursus on the Odyssey, where Adorno and Horkheimer, in the interesting way that, again, that text never makes clear who is saying what.
Yeah.
But kind of posit that Odysseus is, again, I think that people kind of misread that essay sometimes, and Adorno and Horkheimer are saying like, oh, Odysseus is literally bourgeois. More so that like Odysseus like is a culture hero who like embodies qualities that have always existed in humanity, but are particularly like dominant under capitalism, and like we can see antecedents of like capitalist or like bourgeois thinking like in his mindset.
Yeah, and I've got one very short quote because I don't want to read too much of the ones that I picked, but they say, and this is to Adorno and Horkheimer discussing the way that the bourgeoisie subjectivity is about renunciation, where you can't have the things that you're ostensibly saying you want to have or are told that you're supposed to have. The nimble-witted survives only at the price of his own dream, which he wins only by demystifying himself as well as the powers without. He can never have everything. He has always to wait, to be patient, to do without. He may not taste the lotus or eat the cattle of the sun god Hyperion, and when he steers between the rocks, he must count on the loss of the men whom Scylla plucks from the boat. He just pulls through. Struggle is his survival, and all the fame that he and the others win in the process serves merely to confirm that the title of hero is only gained at the price of the abasement and mortification of the instinct for complete, universal, and undivided happiness. Woo. Yeah, so the only reason that Odysseus is able to survive and be cunning is because he is not accepting like the instinct for happiness, and he must always like renounce. So even all of these things that he's ostensibly interested in. So
like because home is the highest good. I don't want to get off on too big a tangent, but I don't like homecoming narratives.
I think that's been a theme of the show. That, and not a big fan of. It seems like having a family is the real adventure all along.
I think that like I don't want to like posit like, oh, there's a more interesting version of the Odyssey if he never goes home, but merely that like I think that like it's a very like old trope that like you have to go home again. You can't become a new type of person. You can't move on in life. Like home is always the highest good. Like I think that is a running theme throughout human literature, and I think that it is one that isn't particularly progressive in a historical sense.
Well, and I think that's why Tennyson's Ulysses is to seek, to strive, and not to yield. Like Odysseus has to keep going. He doesn't rest at home. And I mean, Tiresias gives him the curse where he says that only when he travels far enough that the ore that he is carrying is mistaken for a grain winnowing fan, then if he sacrifices to Poseidon, he'll be forgiven. So, and I don't think Odysseus ever actually does that. But Tiresias says that's what Poseidon would forgive him if he did that. So,
it's so, again, to return to the sirens, who are kind of our thing here, again, so Odysseus, the sirens become this interesting kind of, again, this place where the sirens are absolute aesthetic pleasure. That actually moves you to action, not merely to contemplation. And Nolan, I'd say this is one of the scenes that is done like most straightforwardly, like true to the text. They sail by the island, they stop up the ears with wax, they tell Odysseus tells him to tie him to the mast. And again, this is a scene where I think Damon actually does a good job, because it really does come across as like he's doing this on a lark. Like he's
it goes from like him like looking worried about like what Tiresias just told him to, hey, tie me the mast, it'll be fun.
It's this moment where you can kind of see like a slightly like different version of this movie where Odysseus is like more heroic in a way, like, and not like good, but like, oh, he wants to go on adventures. He's kind of enjoying himself even while his men are getting killed.
Well, he's the man of the world. He's the one who seeks new experiences. So there's this implication. He said, it's not even an implication. He just says like, oh, I really don't want to go home. Like I'm scared to go home.
But like, we don't see that enough because he's too busy just moping most of the time.
Right.
And I'd much rather see him like actively trying to distract himself more. Anyway.
What's that over there? He just like turns the boat. So again,
again, I think that Nolan actually does a good job here. Like the sirens, like we see them from a distance. They're out of focus. They could just be ladies. They could be ladies with bird bodies. They could be ladies with fish bodies. Like there's all these different versions of the sirens. Like, he leaves it ambiguous. So he doesn't have to do something that maybe he thinks is silly. Because it's not really about what they look like. Right. It's about what they can do.
And there's a very smart point of view switch to one of his right-hand men during the sequence, which also I think adds to that.
Like we switch to his POV so we can't hear.
And like the sound does a great job of like enacting muffling. That was maybe my favorite audio design moment in the movie, where there's like a siren song that's playing, or like a faint, cue. And then when everybody puts wax in their ears and the right hand man does, it like blocks the sound out like you're putting in earplugs. And then he's watching Matt Damon, and then Matt Damon has the voiceover.
Yeah, and he's also like, again, like the sirens. I think again, it's this kind of horror key. Like it feels like we're hearing like the music of Eric Zahn. Like there's you know, this almost Lovecraftian implication where it's like, oh, this is like, again, it's too beautiful to hear. It's this moment where it's like, oh, this is like what Nolan manages to actually, I think, pretty well pull off, like something that theoretically works best in text, which is telling you something, but not actually having to fully explicate what it means. Yeah. You know, we're told the Song of the Sirens is so beautiful that it'll, you know, cause you to dash your ship against the rocks. Can I hear the Song of the Sirens? No. Yeah. But trust me, it's really good.
Well, and I like too that I don't think Nolan has the standard reading, which is that only the sirens know of the Trojan War. So that like when Odysseus can't really tell anyone about the Trojan War because they weren't there for 10 years on the beach, but the sirens know. And instead, Nolan kind of talks about how like it's like the voiceover is like it's the one thing that is unbearable. It's like the loss of everything that you wanted and no longer have. It's the feeling that you don't actually want to go home. So like, you know, that's like what reduces Matt Damon to tears. This sort of like renounced dream of happiness, basically, like Adorno and Horkheimer say. But
okay, yeah. So I know we kind of swung past it, Ben. Do we want to talk about the Land of the Dead a little bit?
Yeah, because that's straight up my favorite sequence. And I think that was when I was like, one, this movie is great. Two, I think I like this sequence way better than the Northman, because the Northman attempts to approximate kind of what the Hades thing is going for. But I feel like the way all of the elements work together really heighten the supernatural feeling of the scene. I think, and as you were saying, in a way, like this is what we came to see. And so like the soldiers climb out of the ground, which like, again, realism, but I think in a way that's kind of like unnerving. And they're all like standing on the beach in front of Odysseus, and then like Agamemnon and Sinon like glide forward and they accept the like blood sacrifice that they have to give, so that they can basically like tell Odysseus that he like fucked up. Like Sinon's basically like, you lied to me, like you took advantage of me to sell your little trick. And Odysseus is like, well, I needed you to believe. And like Sinon is like, yeah, that's a great comfort to me now. Like basically like, and I think there's an interesting moment where Nolan is going for a kind of trans reading by casting Elliot Page, having Sinon's character say the best people like are sacrificed first, basically, or like are given over to this scheme that I think is another gesture at like topical political concerns, but also just kind of feels like cold comfort. like you know what I mean? It's like like not like, oh, like I'm like this is, you know, bad. It's like, yeah, this does happen, and I guess we can't do anything about it. Like, and so it's a way that's like kind of like that trans reading to me is like pessimistic as hell if we want to do that. And then but again, that scene's great. I think Elliot Page does a great job. And then Agamemnon glides forward, and you hear the not Bane-like voice of Benny Safdie going like, Odysseus, wisest of all my generals. Like, you know, like, and I'm just like, it's Benny Safdie. And he basically, somebody said on Twitter, does like a ChatGPT output on how to go home, where he's like, slow down, assess the situation. Because Agamemnon like reveals like what happened to him, basically. So, and he's like, don't do that, Odysseus. So, yeah.
Yeah. Don't have pissed off your wife before you even left by sacrificing your kid.
Yeah, for divine wins. Yeah, or for favorable wins. Yeah. And but I don't know, it's a moment where like the epicness of the backstory coalesces with the heightened presentation, and you finally get the feeling of like Odysseus being like a schemer and deceptive, which is like, again, I think crucial to his character. And I feel like you don't really see that until that scene. So
yeah, you know, I think the scene's really interesting because, again, I think it's one of the places where Nolan is making like a pretty deliberate choice in a way that doesn't feel like, again, motivated by his need to be realistic.
Yeah.
So much as like by his design. I mean, I think there's a element where the Sinon character is there in this way that it's kind of to humanize Odysseus in this way, because you find out like he's basically like been watching out for this kid. You know, because like he ends up like getting like this isn't in the Odyssey, but like the Odysseus is like the troops from Ithaca are chosen by lot, and basically
Yeah.
like this 9-year-old like gets conned into like taking Robert Pattinson's spot.
Right.
And Odysseus is like, I'm gonna watch out for this kid. So like the implication is like he's been like watching out for this kid for like the last 10 years. And then the kid like is the first character we see on the beach. The Trojans like kill him when they're taking the Trojan horse.
In order to sell the deception. Yeah.
Yes. So this is, Odysseus makes, or not Odysseus, Nolan. Oh, interesting Freudian slip there. Nolan is making a very deliberate choice to put a different character in this scene than the character who is in the scene in the poem.
Yeah.
Because in this scene, in the book, it's Achilles. And it's frankly one of the most poignant moments in the entire book. I think in some ways the thematic heart of like the Iliad and the Odyssey, like as like a diptych.
Yeah.
And that's, Odysseus saying, I would rather, be the lowest slave and live one more day alive than be down here with all my glory.
Yeah. Yeah. Dead Achilles. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And so I've seen people defending this choice by saying like Achilles is too big a character to do that
right
with. Because we didn't get like there's no like Odyssey or Iliad like prequel to kind of have set that character up, so like it would have been distracting.
Well, I think if the only way you could do it in this version of the movie is when he says goodbye to Agamemnon at the end of Troy, there's Achilles is there, and Achilles is like, I hate your fucking guts or something. Like he basically says what he says in Iliad, which is like, I hate when a man says one thing and means another. And then, then he would have to show up later in hell, basically. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think it's just weird. Like, I don't understand like people's defense of this, because it's just like, just cast a guy to be Achilles.
Right.
And will you cast a guy to be Agamemnon? Cast a guy to like be the guy who groans when the Cyclops gets his eye put out. You don't need a bunch of setup. And I mean, you could have a little setup. You could have some setup. You could show a scene of Achilles doing something in the Trojan War. Yeah. It's not distracting. It's only distracting because, like, we think that we can't, like, I don't know. It's really, it's weird because the movie clearly, like, does not think that, like, referencing stuff that happens in the Iliad or in the Trojan War is off the table.
Because Agamemnon is crucially that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, there's absolutely no reason to think that like you're gonna just like it feels like what it feels like are people being like, oh, Achilles would be too hot. Yeah. And it's like we'd see like hot Achilles, and it's like everyone would be so like, oh, I want to watch a movie about that guy.
About hot
like,
Achilles. Yeah.
Like they never cast anybody. Like, what are you talking? Like, we're watching Odysseus' story.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the audience just want to see sexy Achilles. Yeah. So it's so sexy. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like I can see why Nolan took Achilles out, but it is kind of a loss. Just that like perspective from the other half. Because again, like Sinan is, I think, attempting to do something like that, but in a way that's like more about humanizing Odysseus, and then Agamemnon does it to set up the end, but also to present a like, again, evil Xenia corrupted. Like, since I sacrificed my daughter to favorable winds, Clytemnestra is going to stab me in the face as soon as I get back home. Like, so
I will say, I think, Ben, what did you think of Agamemnon's like look?
I think I thought it was stupid in the preview materials, but then like when he takes the armor off, it's another version of like Nolan being so literal about the symbolism that like it actually kind of works for me. Like once he takes it off and you're like, oh, it's like this hollow thing that he has assumed this position when in reality he's just as normal as everyone else and can be killed, as opposed to, it's like the hollowness of honor essentially. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, I really like the armor. I think that like the like gold, like the bronze spine on the back is really cool. Like I agree. I think it kind of looked dumb like in the preview, but like on screen it works really well. And I think the symbolism you're referencing, but it feels like this weird moment with the art direction where it's like there are these little glimpses of like hyper stylization
Yeah.
that are so much more striking than anything else on screen.
Like that shot of when they finally open the gates and like Agamemnon is like towering over everyone outside the gates.
Yeah, like fucking Darth Vader.
Yeah, and then he like Terminator walks into Troy. Yeah, like that
and
is.
Again, and you totally like again for me, I was like, damn, I wish we were getting that Iliad movie because I want to see Benny Safdie like being shitty to Achilles and ruining everything.
Yeah, just like he's like, yeah, just get over it. Yeah, like
and like so it was this moment where like all of a sudden like because I think because of like the performance but also like because of the art direction like all of a sudden the movie like expanded in scope for me and I felt like I could see the whole like Trojan War saga in front of me.
Yeah,
like between that and then like again Lupita Nyong'o is great as Helen. Like that again, I can see like how that whole story went. But then there's also this weird stuff where it's like, oh, Agamemnon was only doing that for trade routes. And like
it follows from the like less heightening the stuff or lessening the stuff so that like it's like the real thing that's going on, not the explained version, but it kind of like undercuts the drama to me in this case. It's like, oh, trade routes. Okay. Yeah.
And again, like I think the Trojan horse is another like interesting example. Like, have you at least seen like a picture of like the Trojan horse from the movie Troy?
I think so. Yeah.
It's just like they go for like this kind of like primitivist, like, oh, this is like a bunch of driftwood like strapped together. Like it's supposed to look very like crude, if still like monumental. Whereas in this, they really like go for the classical like Trojan horse. Like it is a beautiful, like realist Greek statue of like a rearing up horse. And it looks cool. Like, and again, this is this moment where again, like with Agamemnon, with the Trojan horse, like there's these moments where again, I'm like, this is working. This is working when it's choosing to be more stylized, works when it's choosing to give me what I'm here to see.
Right. Which is not realism, but
yeah, with the Land of the Dead, I am here to see hell. Yeah. And it shows me hell for a scene, and it's great.
Yeah.
It's the moments where Nolan, like, I feel like, again, Nolan's weird. Like, again, there's this element where, like, I know he's talented. Like, I know he is good at the act of making movies. Like, he can make a movie with the best of them.
And he can sell a movie, too. Like, people show up to his movies. Yeah.
But there are these moments in this movie where it feels like he is either trying to be too clever or he's, like, second-guessing himself and is like, I can't sell Scylla this particular way. I have to do the boring version of this. And it just makes the movie feel muddy, and it makes it feel like it's, like I said, less than the sum of its parts to me.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes to me. That I'm thinking again of that Duty quote where it's like, I decided to make the Odyssey because no one had done it before, and not like I actually have a lot to say about this material. He only really realized that after he read it. So, and I think you get, like you're saying, I think that kind of shows in what parts get emphasized over other ones. So
yeah. So I know we're getting like a little long in the tooth here. So I do feel like we should kind of talk about like what this movie kind of settles on being about. Yeah. Because I feel like we've kind of talked through a lot of, I don't know, we can talk about some of the stuff at the end too, if we think there's more to get out of that. I thought the ending was kind of, or like the when he gets back to Ithaca, I think is kind of when the movie gets least interesting because it all of a sudden isn't episodic anymore. We're just kind of following, like it becomes like much more typical Nolan, like kind of a heist almost.
Yeah, it's like I'm going to do a little rerun of Prestige Inception. And Tenet. Yeah, or Tenet, Inception and Tenet. Yeah.
So I kind of found myself fading a little bit there. I was definitely like, I wanted to see like how they do like him killing all the suitors, and like I thought that was appropriately like sweaty. feel.
And did you also think it was a little John Wick coded? and by that I mean like the fact that there's like multiple attention to like, now he's got the spear, now he's got the shield. Also, there's that bit where I will say that the it's sweaty, yeah, but like Nolan can't really shoot action to save his life, and like the weird like Jason Bourne-esque cross-cutting, like, you know, like Matt Damon was in the Bourne Identity, like it kind of made sense, but I also, there's like a scene where he swings the club and like the swing goes under the frame, and then like you don't see it hit, but the frame, what is framed is like him getting knocked backwards, and I was like, show me the hit, I want to see the hit, but yeah, it is very sweaty. So
yeah, that again feels like kind of a thing where like Nolan, I think kind of rightly, is like, well, it's kind of boring if he just kills them all easily, like in the book.
Right.
Like I have to add some like drama here. So there's like all this stuff about like, oh, they hid weapons in the house so they could pull them out.
But he did keep the arrow going into the neck, which I told my dad was going to be in the movie. And I was very glad to see that he kept that, because that's when, you know, like Homer has done a good action scene. Who am I to mess with this? Like, I'm just going to show you the arrow going into the guy's neck. So,
but so we made a lot of, so I guess we could talk a bit about the kind of final like thematic thing this movie decides it's about. And I know we've been talking around it a lot.
I'm still confused about part of it. So yeah, we should talk about it.
So we've been, you know, referencing it kind of flippantly throughout the recording. Throughout the movie, there's these rumors of the sea people. So again, you know, Chris Nolan read at least one book about Bronze Age history before he started making this movie.
Yeah.
So again, this is this weird thing where, like, again, for I guess realism, he's like trying to bring real history into the narrative. So basically, you know, this movie's about the Bronze Age collapse in a way. Like Troy is kind of posited as like this moment where, because of the Trojan horse, because of like the disruption of like the traditions of like honorable warfare, society starts going to shit, and people, like, I guess raiding is getting more common, and like pretty, like, the Greeks are like, you know, again, there's this thing at the end where it's like, we're the sea people, we were the people from the sea. Because like on their way home, they were raiding all these, you know, towns and villages on their way back home to Greece.
And we should say real quick that the real life sea people were essentially climate change migrants from around that area. And because of the climate change, they had to go to other places, and they were interpreted as invading armies, but they were often bringing their families with them because their homes had been destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I feel like there's again, with this movie kind of being this weird, like, again, it's not really like pro-immigrant or pro-migrant. It's just like anti-xenophobia, but in like a very like stilted way.
It's pro having good manners.
Yeah. Which again, that is what the Odyssey is actually about. It's not actually about being nice to foreigners. It's about having good manners.
It's about not staying at your friend's house too long so they get mad at you.
Or trying to have sex with his wife.
I mean, that's pretty much it. Yeah. So
but so Nolan is basically like posits that, and again, I think that the movie does, like, to his credit, I think there's like a certain amount of like problematization here. Again, the sea people were not caused by the Trojan War, they were caused by climate change.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe that's kind of what that scene with Athena, where he's like, I feel so bad, I did this. And she's like, what are you talking about? You don't know how the gods work. You don't know what's going on. Quit judging yourself for things that are totally outside of your control.
Right. Yeah.
But again, like, I don't think Nolan really credibly makes that case. It, like, the rest of the movie takes very seriously the idea that, like, the Trojan horse is the atomic bomb, and it has changed everything.
Yeah, and there's not like a scene where somebody else is like, what are you talking about?
Harvests are getting bad.
Yeah. Or like, I don't know.
Oh, it's so cold here, like, but it's supposed to be summer.
Yeah, or just there have been many other ways to reaffirm that, but instead it just feels like a modern day person saying like, it's not about you, you know, which is like, you know, every like kind of trauma based narrative type stuff.
There are systematic problems, like Odysseus.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's this implication that like they're the sea people, they're the ones causing the Bronze Age collapse. But then when he gets back to Ithaca, there's also this implication that like, no, there are also real sea people and they're coming.
Yeah.
And so that's when we get to like the very end of this movie, which is like, again, this kind of running motif throughout the film is like Odysseus saying that like after he gets home, he's going to sail into the West and he's going to honor all his men who fell like before they could get home.
Because he stops doing that because he can't survive. Which is another, or rather, it's not good survival sense to stop and properly bury the dead because I'm in such a hurry to get all this stuff taken care of. And it's a nice instance of Odysseus subverting, again, renunciation. He's renouncing these established traditions so that he can survive himself. But I think also with the bicameral mind thing, it's like, I don't even see this as a transgression anymore because I'm just trying to survive internally. Like my conscience says, don't worry about it. So, whereas before it would be unthinkable to think about that. So, yeah.
Yeah. But so, you know, he kills the suitors, he gets home, he reunites with his family. And again, this was the moment where I was feeling genuinely like kind of mad at the movie because it sort of sets up that like Odysseus, he's gotten so wounded by like fighting all the suitors, he's gonna die. Like he's too far gone. And then he's like literally like, psych.
Yeah.
Like Penelope's like, no, Odysseus, don't. Like he's talking about like, I have to go. And she's like, no, Odysseus, don't die. And he's like, not death, exile.
Right. And before that, he does the equivalent of somebody called the ambulance, but not for me. like where it like looks like he's going to get killed. And then he just immediately has like a reversal and kills like 5 guys in like 20 seconds. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So then the like last scene of the movie is Odysseus and Penelope like getting on like, you know, their best, because there's also again this weird thing earlier in the movie where it's like Penelope's like, we should run away, we should leave Ithaca and go, you know, shouldn't have to go join the war, which again just feels like very like Disney princess, like, oh, this is a Bronze Age woman talking like a modern person.
Well, and that sequence has a magnificent golden hour sunset shot from the prow of a boat that almost looks like a home movie. There's something about the 70 millimeter and the lighting in that shot, like it was awesome, but at the same time I'm like, this is like all like hyper real almost. Like
again, Nolan is an arch sentimentalist, and I do not care what anyone says. That man is so sentimental, it is painful. But like they're getting on this boat. It's like there's this thing where it's like, oh, they're gonna go live out. Like Penelope's gonna get to go on adventures now.
We're gonna go to Florida.
Tom Holland is standing there in one of the worst looking costumes I think I've ever seen.
Yeah,
again, just gorping at the camera in like this like bleached white tunic and like a like golden headband style crown, but it looks like too thick.
Yeah.
So it just looks like he has like a weird like big ring on his head, like an inner tube basically.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I guess he's gonna manage the farm against the sea people because we won't do that. So
yeah, it's like, oh, Odysseus the hero, he can't protect anyone from the sea people. He's got to leave, and he's going to leave Tom Holland here. But again, it's like, but then they're leaving. So yeah, there's kind of this thing where it's like, oh, well, you know, it feels kind of like this weird thing where it's like, it's not quite like Camelot or something, but it's like, oh, Ithaca, like this is a lost age and like blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But it's like, no, Tom Holland's in charge. He's going to try to fight the sea people. And like, they're on the boat and Odysseus is like, this is all going to collapse.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna die. They're gonna forget everything.
Yeah, he has a moment of divine sight, and he says, "Our age of bronze is ending." Like, yeah, and to me, I think I told you, John, in DM, that was a moment of like the screenwriter is talking now. Like, yeah, like so, but.
Yeah, Ben, did you know that people in the Bronze Age, they knew they were living in the Bronze Age all the time? They were like, "Wow, it's so cool to be living in the Bronze Age. I sure hope it doesn't collapse."
We make all of our things out of bronze. I can't think of anything else that we could make our stuff out of.
Somebody invents blacksmithing. That just happened.
They have iron now. God, yeah. The ending. I think I was experiencing
from the sea.
Yeah, I was like experiencing like whiplash with like how like weirdly like again hitting you over the head with stuff at the end. This ending becomes like it's just.
And again, and I think that this comes down to again like the thing where like the visual, like what's happening visually, what's happening in the dialogue, what's happening thematically, like these things do not gel together. Like Matt Damon as Odysseus says, like they're going to forget how to write our great writings. So they're only going to have songs to remember this story by. So like, it's this weird thing where it's like, oh, like the story's misremembered. Like the Odyssey we have is the misremembering of the real Odyssey. But also I pointed out to Ben after I got home from the movie, we were chatting, and I was like, I don't think we don't see anyone read anything.
Yeah.
We don't see a book or even like a scroll. We don't see like a single like letter of written language like across this entire movie. And the thing that Nolan is choosing to highlight at the end is like, oh, everyone's going to become illiterate. It's like, I wasn't aware that people were literate to begin with right now.
I also like, it's also weird to say that at the end of the story. It's like, was the story even about this? Like the idea, it's like, oh, people can't read anymore and we'll only have songs. And also, is there an implication, John, that the songs won't remember that Odysseus did the atomic bomb? like it's like they're not going to get the right moral from the story.
I think that's basically correct.
Which like what? Yeah, like I don't know. Like the forgive them, they know not what they do posture at the ending. It strikes to some people as particularly galling, given the political concerns. Or it's just like oh, I'm really upset about the goddamn society, but it starts at the level of the individual because everyone is so confused and they don't know what they're doing. We have to accept it, well,
it feels like very like liberal boomer now kind of coded, where it's like, oh man, it really sucks that everyone's gonna like everything's stupid and like everyone's gonna die and things are gonna be shitty. I tried really hard though.
And now I get to retire. Yeah. So
you do something about it? No. I know I talk all the time about how great I am and all these cool things I did and could still do, but I don't feel like it.
Yeah. The man, sing to me of the man muse, the man of one kind of turn. So yeah.
But it's this weird thing where again, like you want to make a movie about the Bronze Age collapse, but like again, like the Bronze Age collapse was genuinely like a horrifying thing to live through.
Yeah,
like an incredible like loss of like culture, life, economic, and like artistic and cultural complexity. Like. On a mind-boggling scale.
Yeah, like people had to start over. Yeah.
It was apocalyptic in like a true way. But then again, I was thinking about like, what would a movie like this look like that took seriously the idea of like, oh, this is like the late Bronze Age.
Yeah.
And like Ithaca looked like a late Bronze Age palace.
Yeah.
And like people were dressed in like, again, maybe somewhat stylized, but like appropriate costume with like appropriate makeup. Like there's a lot of really cool art of like women in like Bronze Age Mycenae like had really cool, like they would like paint their faces like entirely white and then they would do like interesting like dot patterns and things on their faces. Cool. And again, like there were different like clothing taboos, like women in like Bronze Age like Mycenaean culture like could just have their tits out all the time. And again, like I understand that that's like reads a little different now, but it's like you can choose to actually portray the time period. That's realism.
Yeah.
That's actually realistic. There's this weird way in which like we read realism as just like things look dull.
Right. Yeah.
And that's historically not true. Like, I feel like people talk about this a lot with like adaptations of medieval stuff, like particularly kind of that wave of stuff that came over. Again, what does Chris Nolan have to feel bad about? It's telling people that realism is things being gray.
Yeah. And I feel like that sort of hyper realism medieval stuff is also Eggers's bag. And I find some of his movies to be like a bit too micromanaged sometimes, like where it's almost like there's like no breathing room at times for how obsessive the attention to detail is. So yeah.
Again, I'll at least give him credit. Like he's stylized.
Yeah.
Like that's a stylistic choice versus like, I know it's a stylistic choice here too, but it feels like a stylistic choice being done for different reasons. Like again, Eggers is making horror movies when all his stuff is like dark and gray and black. It's because we're watching like a gothic horror movie like Nosferatu. It's like, he's not trying to portray real life in some way. Right. Like he's not positing this is realism. It is like a genre convention.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's what this movie's doing. Chris Nolan is just really uncomfortable with color.
Yeah, and style, which is, it's funny. He picked, did you see his Criterion closet? One of the ones that he picked was Lost Highway. And he said that when he initially saw it, he didn't like it. And and later it stuck with him, is what he said, which he said was a good sign. But yeah, like, I don't know. I think Nolan he's too much of like a contraptionist. He's a puzzle maker. So yeah.
That reminds me of a section from the Dialectic of Enlightenment. There's a quote in there.
Yeah.
That I wanted to read at some point, and maybe this is a good place to kind of close up shop. But there's a quote about Odysseus.
Yeah.
That I think says a lot about it. It reminds me of Nolan. let me track it down real quick. Okay. Yeah, so I think that this kind of sums up my thoughts on Nolan as both kind of this, like, I think a pretty, like, again, kind of quintessentially, like, technocratic, like, yet still, like, romanticist filmmaker.
Yeah.
Someone who is very skilled, but, like, also kind of, again, something is missing here. Not like a great artist. He is the prototypical bourgeois, a with-it hobbyist. His do-it-yourself effort is an imitation of the actual labor of a craftsman, from which, in the framework of differentiated conditions of property ownership, he has long been necessarily excluded.
Yeah. And I love that they apply that to Odysseus about the bed, because Penelope tests Odysseus one last time and says, if you're really my husband, could you move the bed? And Odysseus goes, actually, you would know that I built that bed on a tree and it can't be moved. And then he talks for like 20 minutes about how he made the bed, thus proving to Penelope that he is the real Odysseus. But also, I just like the idea of just somebody info dumping about the bed during like a crucial scene. Just like, actually, you would know that I built it around the olive tree to match the room. So, but yeah, it's the same thing with Nolan. He's the do-with-it hobbyist who can do these great labors of construction that are not working class labor because he's excluded from doing those. So,
yeah, I feel like I've been a hater in this episode, and like, yes, but again, I think that like what I find frustrating is the fact that like I thought I was coming around to Nolan. I thought I really liked Oppenheimer. I thought Oppenheimer was a really interesting movie, and like a really beautiful movie, like visually. And I think that it was like much better written than this.
Yeah.
And so, I wasn't excited for this movie per se, but like when you said it was good at first, I was like, okay, I want to check it out. Like,
yeah, maybe I oversold it a bit, because I think when I was saying it was good, I was thinking it's sort of like a fascinating object rather than like a good movie.
It's worth seeing, and I think that even as we're saying all this stuff, like I think this movie's worth seeing. Like, go see it. But yeah, like I found it to be a frustrating experience overall, and I wanted to get more out of it than I did, and I wanted to like it more than I did, and the stuff that I liked, I found all the more frustrating because it's surrounded by so much stuff I think is garbage.
Yeah. And to me, I think I have similar opinions as you. This got me thinking of how you would do a actual mythic retelling of Odysseus, and I realized like you would just have to have different narrators, Like I was thinking, here's how I would do it. It would be they're waiting for Odysseus to come back, and then each one of the people tells a different story about Odysseus. So he actually is like a contradictory persona. And I think that would be the way to do it. You could get as many different kind of, I mean, it would be tough to do, but you could get the stylistic changes. You can get
even
some
like
of the,
one of them could be Odysseus, like in disguise.
Right. And I mean, he tells a story. What is it? The people that he visits, where he cries when he asks them to sing about Troy.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but the guys who give him the magic ship.
Yeah, and I think if like one of them is Odysseus and tells his story a little too hard to believe, like I don't know, that's to me you could capture the contradictory part of it and still like have style if you wanted to. It wouldn't have to be realistic. But maybe this is like, again, this just feels like a postmodern thing, like fucking Pynchon does it in Mason and Dixon, basically. So yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, again, I think that like it's interesting because again, I'm saying all this stuff about like Nolan won't give us like what we're there to see. And again, I think that like if you want there to be doubt in terms of like the supernatural, that's the way to do it. It's to put the have it be a story, not have it be like, again, part of the issue with this realism is like everything we're showed is left unambiguous. Like this is what is happening.
Right. Yeah.
But like we're not given a means to like put all those things together in like a way that feels sloppy.
I think the only ambiguity that Nolan is capable of is ambiguity of form. Where like in Oppenheimer, when he is telling about Jean Tatlock getting killed, there was like an inset shot of the hands forcing her head in the tub. And we don't know, does that mean she was killed? Does that mean it's guilt? And the only way you can do that is by, again, because Nolan can't write this, is you inset the scene with the editor. And so like we haven't really talked about the editing of this movie, but there's a point to be made that some of the editing could only have been done because of Oppenheimer. And I think to me it makes for an effective setup, but it's again, he can't get ambiguity in the content. It has to be like the arrangement. So yeah.
All right. Well, anything else to say about the Odyssey, Ben?
I feel like I need to read the Odyssey again. This has got me thinking about Greek mythology, which I think is, again, not something we can say is a good victory for the movie, but I do like thinking about Greek mythology and that stuff. So I don't know. I'm going to be reading the Odyssey. I'm going to be thinking about braided storytelling. So
yeah, maybe we do the Penelopiad next season, the Margaret Atwood. That could be fun.
Yeah, Claire's told me it's good. We were talking about Odysseus adaptations. She said it's good. So
yeah. All right. Well, listeners, thank you for joining us. We'll be back here soon with our next episode on The Tunnel, depending on when this comes out. But yeah, thank you so much as always. And hope this one was fun for you to listen to. It was fun for Ben and I to record. Till then, Semper Books.
Semper Movies. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to The Infinite Library. If you liked our show, we hope you'll subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the podcast app of your choice. It helps us a lot. If you want to follow us on social media, we can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Infinite Library Pod. If you'd like to contact our team directly with episode ideas or feedback, email us at infinitelibrarypod@gmail.com. Our intro music is by Amos Legend in the Forest of Mayhem. Our outro music is by DJ Daggy Diggs, and our logo was created by Lars Noir.